Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and to leave us a good review. The more reviews we get, the bigger our audience gets, and the bigger our audience gets, the better this podcast will become. Hey, Riki, let us know ways people can get in touch with us.
Sure, Tim. We've got Twitter, which is @thirdpartyrep, R-E-P. We've got Instagram @thirdparty.repair. Facebook, facebook.com/thirdpartyrepair, and email thirdpartyrepair@gmail.com.
Hello again and welcome to the Third Party Repair podcast with your hosts Tim McDonald and Riki Baker. Hi Riki, how's things?
Hey Tim, everything's good. Listen, we've got a bit of your sunshine over here at the moment. It's beautiful. It's mid-20s, probably not as hot as you get over there, but it's lovely. I'm sitting here in my flip-flops, my shorts, ready to go enjoy some sun after this.
Ready for a sunbathe, yeah?
That's it.
Lovely. Had a really enjoyable time last episode talking to Rico. That was amazing. Everyone should check that out if they didn't listen to that. I had some great feedback. And I thought we'd just this week dive straight into a further discussion between the two of us. We will, at the end of this episode, reveal who our guest is for next week. So make sure you stick around for that. So shall we get into it? Do you want to add anything before we get started, Riki?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, for future episodes, we've already told you how to get in touch with us. If you are someone that would like to come on, you have a special, you've had an experience or you have some views on our industry or any other industry and you'd like to come on, please do reach out to us. It would be great to hear from you. Or if there's just a subject that you'd like us to talk about and to cover, and to shine a light on it, just let us know. And yeah, Tim, with that, I'd like to jump straight into something that we touched on with Rico last week, and that is the sandwich board design on the logic boards that Apple use on the iPhone X and newer. And it's also something that Huawei and Samsung have adopted as well. So we touched on that in the previous episode, and it's where the logic boards are joined together with data pins acting as physical joints as well. And I'd like to talk a bit about how this feeds into the authorized repair networks and what this means for customers with very minimal damage to their devices.
Yeah, fair call. I guess first place maybe is to start always as I like to start, which is start basic for the people who maybe are hearing that for the first time, and then we'll get a little bit more technical. But sandwich board, so we're talking about the logic board, the brains of the phone, so to speak, and why have they moved, or what did they have before, and do you think that they've moved to this style of engineering?
So what they had before was they had multi-layered logic boards. And by multi-layered, it was one physical piece, but it had lots of different layers to it. And on each layer, they can design and they can build traces and tracks which join components together that complete circuits. They can do that on multiple layers. What they had with the iPhone X and newer, and what Samsung and Huawei seem to have now as well, is that they can't physically fit the components that they want on one multi-layered logic board. They physically can't do it, and they can't do it whilst also increasing the size of other components within the device. So as we're moving further towards biometric sensors like Touch ID, Face ID, whilst we're trying to put bigger batteries inside devices, they're trying to make components like the logic board itself smaller. So the invention that they've come up with is stacking the logic boards on top of each other. They call it, or we call it, the sandwich layer design. And the Samsung S20 Plus 5G, I believe that is triple stacked. The latest Huawei's are triple stacked as well. And I know that the XR Face ID flood illuminator is also triple stacked. So by triple stacked, it's not just two layers going together, it is 3 layers. With that, they managed to group more components into a smaller physical footprint inside the device.
That's right. So more real estate to put more tech in other areas of the housing,
correct,
I guess. Right? Yeah. Okay, so what does that mean for third-party repair?
So, well, I mean, what it means for repair in general is it means more space for other components, which is great. They can fit more physical hardware inside the device, so that would then create further software features in the future. But what it does mean is these pins that join the layers together, be it double or triple, or in the future quadruple, these pins that connect each layer together, if they become disconnected or brittle, like we discussed with Rico in the last episode, they can cause problems with your device. Now, I've got first-hand experience of this just this week. We had an 11 Pro Max that arrived with us, and it had a broken screen. It did not charge, but it had a broken screen. The rear housing, it had no mark on it whatsoever. The sides are completely immaculate. It's not very old, obviously, but the customer dropped something on the front of it. And where it has cracks on the front, where something has been dropped on it, it hasn't even been dropped over the top of where an integral part, like component on the logic board is. However, long story short, we tested it with another screen. It didn't charge. It didn't come on. And it is a CPU fault. So after we split the two layers, we split the sandwich layers and we removed the top layer and we had a look at the bottom. Further up from where the damage was on the device, further up from that, the actual CPU has got a physical crack right along the middle of it. So the CPU is physically cracked and damaged, and there is no internally. You couldn't, if you remove the screen and you looked at it, there's no real indication or sign that it had been damaged at all. But just the impact on a completely different part of the screen had sort of reverberated inside the device, the vibrations, and it caused the CPU on the logic board to crack. Now, I'm not saying that this will be a really common occurrence, but this does highlight sort of with the sandwich layer design how something like a broken screen or something like dropping your device and just a small crack can turn into something more sinister, whereby the device would need replacing rather than repairing, if you were to go down the authorized repair network. So, and what that means for the end consumer is it would just mean more money and loss of data if it needed replacing rather than repairing.
I'm not so sure about yourself, but a common question I hear from customers at this point, when we find out that the logic board, if we isolate the other components, they're perfectly fine, and we can see here the logic board needs some work done to it. They just ask, so you'll just replace the logic board. So could we go into maybe just a little bit why that's not feasible, just to swap out the entire logic board? Is this a scale thing? Is it a monetary thing? How much it costs to do that? Whether someone be willing to pay the price to do that? Availability of these is all today? Because in theory, that would be nice, wouldn't it? We just swap the whole board out and away the customer goes. It
would be, but that would be a stopgap. That would be a middle gap between repairing it in the first place and the authorized network replacing it. Now, cost-wise for you and me to source logic boards and to do that type of repair, it's expensive. So it's expensive to source the logic boards with the pair components as it is, because they are the most expensive part of the device. And you're also, when you start moving into doing that type of repair, you're effectively, if you're replacing the logic board, or you're putting a new IMEI and serial number within the device, you're effectively, you're selling a phone, if you would. So, I mean, the laws and regulations around that, they vary globally, but it's not quite as simple as just swapping over a screen or something like that. If you're dealing with a new phone, you need to know where that phone's come from, make sure that it's legitimate, it's come from a good source, make sure it's had no previous repairs done to it, which is quite hard to verify with the iPhone X, with the sandwich layer design boards. It's quite hard to verify that. But yeah, of course that's an option, but with that option as well, the customer would lose their data. So for me, going back to the sandwich layer thing as a whole, the design of the board, although it's got a smaller physical footprint, it has, if under smaller damage, so under a smaller drop, the device will be it's more likely to be catastrophically damaged, so that the device would need a replacement logic board, or the device would need replacing. Whereas on older models, the device could suffer the same impact, the same damage, and there is a much higher likelihood that logic board would not suffer any damage, and it would continue to work after, say, in my instance, a screen repair.
Mm-hmm. So does this bring about the topic of planned obsolescence a little bit, and whether or not, we said there's always two sides to this coin, it seems, whenever we look at when we try and reverse engineer literally the devices, but then reverse engineer possibly the mindset of the engineering process as to why they've arrived at this design in the first place. You started by saying that it makes sense because that way you can fit a lot more components into a smaller space. But then it does also, the design of it does make it, as Rico, you and I discussed last week, how it does make it a lot more difficult to repair, and potentially a customer could lose data or just lose the device completely. Do you think there's any intentionalities on, is that even a word, intentionalities? It is now.
Do I think it's intentional? Do I think it's intentional design by them to render the device?
Exactly.
Okay, so...
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, rather than me give my opinion, I'll go over what I see happening right now in the larger repair landscape, and something that I want to touch on with you slightly later in this episode, but it is the authorized networks. Now, as we discussed in both of the last episodes, there is a big push at the moment for the manufacturers, for the OEMs, to establish bigger authorized networks. So to scale their authorized networks so that they can reach a lot more end consumers officially and via the authorized route, rather than them needing to come to independent third-party repairers. Now, I don't think that it's any coincidence that at the same time they're trying to scale the authorized networks that are only allowed to do certain repairs like screens and batteries under very specific situations. If there's any liquid damage, they're not allowed to. They're very specific over the repairs that they can do. I don't think that it's any coincidence that at the same time they're trying to scale this network, they're also creating the logic board, they're designing the logic board in a way that it will be catastrophically damaged under very minimal accidental damage. So with that would then leave the authorized network in a position where, if it, like this 11 Pro Max that I saw this week, had that have gone to an authorized repair network, they would not have, I mean, it couldn't be repaired anyway, but at least we managed to separate the logic board and see why. If that went to an authorized network, it wouldn't have even got that far. It would have, you would have gone to charge it, it wouldn't have charged, it wouldn't have restored, it wouldn't have connected to the diagnostic software, and it would have been quoted for an out of warranty replacement straight away. So for me, I don't think it's any coincidence that at the same time they're trying to scale their authorized repair networks, the design of the phones is becoming it's becoming obviously clear that they want to replace these devices rather than repair them, or replace more of them than they did previously.
It does seem to feed back into that same space again of making devices less and less repairable, and also the other thing, I don't know if we've touched on this enough, the environmental impact of just over the next. Already, obviously, but then over the next decades to come, it's something that needs to be seriously considered. Where are all these devices going once they're no longer working, and are they being ethically or environmentally disposed of? I'd hate to think what that looks like for the world in the future. Another topic that's been sort of on my mind a lot over the last year is the fact that when I say we, I mean the third-party repair tech industry has been banned, I guess we want to say that word, banned from being allowed to use AdWords, Google AdWords, to advertise our businesses. This has impacted many repair stores around the world. I know that for sure. For people who don't know what that is, when you search for a business, you'll see in the listings there in Google next to the top ones, the little word, it used to be all in yellow and surrounded. Lately, it just seems to be the word ad next to it. And people pay Google significant amounts of money in order to be able to be in that position. And that's one way in which they market themselves to their audience. And our industry in particular is no longer able to do that. So if right now you wanted to test this out, you could go and type in phone repairs or something similar to that into Google right now, and you will find that there is only the organic listings. That is to say, only the natural listings that you get. You won't get any of the AdWords ones, and this has been a problem. So the question is, why has this happened? And I'll throw that to you in a second, Riki. My understanding of it is limited, but from what I can find out, it seems to be something to do with tech support scams. So it seems to be something to do with Google doing something that is helping the community, which is to crack down on tech support scams. What are they? For example, a bug in Google Chrome might be exploited by someone that you get some message come up on the screen saying that you need some help with something, and someone's going to charge you a bunch of money to do that. You call a number, and that person at the end of the phone assists you to remove that from there after you give them your credit card details. So obviously a massive problem that needs to be sorted out, and Google's trying to do their thing to support that. But in doing so, they seem to have lumped in tech support scams with third-party repair. And my confusion is firstly, why are these things even put together in the same breath? I own a phone repair shop. I have nothing to do with tech support in that sense, over the phone advice or helping people with their computers over the phone. I guess there probably are companies around the world who fix phones and do that as well. I'm not one of them. So it does throw me. The other thing is, if I just type in tech support into Google, I get AdWords from companies, local companies in my area. So it's like you're able to check out third-party repair for tech support, but not phone repair. Now, if I've got any of this wrong, I'm more than happy for Riki, you to explain to me what I've got wrong here, or anyone in the audience to phone up. To phone up. To let me know what am I missing, because this seems to be something very controversial in my mind that's being largely ignored. What do you think, Riki? Can I get your thoughts on it?
Every day's a school day, Tim. So I've, a couple of things I want to get clear. If you run a business and prior to this you relied on AdWords, then you didn't run a business. You didn't market. You didn't do your thing. Now, neither you or me are solicitors or legal advisors or anything. We have no legal background whatsoever. So anything we do discuss or say here is purely my opinion and your opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tim, did you use AdWords to advertise your business before Google stopped allowing phone repair shops to advertise for their services?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Tim, do you repair computers for retail customers when they come in?
Yes.
Okay, Tim, how long have you repaired computers for?
10 years.
10 years, okay.
Roughly.
How many customers, Tim, have come into your store and given you the specific story that they've gone onto Google, they've searched for iPhone repair or Samsung repair, they've then clicked an ad, and from that ad they've ended up paying someone via their credit card or debit card. They've ended up paying them to remove software or remove a virus from their computer. How many customers have you had that have specifically followed that exact customer journey?
None.
Me neither. Right? So if this was a common thing and it was so common that Google needed to do this under this pretense, we would know about it. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because I'm sure it does. We get phone calls, we get emails trying to do the same thing. The amount of times I've had phone calls telling me to click the start button on my computer because I've got a virus from some person from a call center that I don't even know, and then telling them I've got a Mac and they hang up on me straight away. The amount of times that's happened all the time. I get it all the time, but that hasn't come from me clicking an ad on Google. Now, this is going to be, for me, a great example of why it's great for you and me not to discuss things off stream so that we can discuss it on streams. Because as a Google AdWords user yourself, we're going to have different opinions on this. And I might surprise you with what I'm going to say a little bit, but I've got reasons for it. So since you stopped using AdWords, you were forced to stop using AdWords because of Google. What impact did that have on your business short term, and what impact has it had on your business long term? And by impact, I mean financially, and I mean door swings, customers coming into your store, or lead generation, getting emails, getting phone calls, that type of stuff. What was it? How was it for you short term, and how has it been long term?
Yeah, it's significant.
You've noticed a big drop?
It's significant.
Okay.
There's a significant... No, I'm not saying... I mean, there's many factors as to what would affect people finding us in the first place, right? And the amount of people that claim that they found us through Google has dropped. And the amount of clicks through to the website and then through to our live chat on our website and all of the other metrics that we have along the way, there's a significant drop.
And financially, if you were to look at turnover for the months where you were using AdWords and compare it with initially, immediately, straight afterwards, and then long term afterwards, have you seen significant drops in revenue or not? Because
no.
although
however, I will add.
Oh, go on. Yeah, sorry.
I will add. Just let me just add. So I will add. I'm not going. I don't think that. Okay, so when that happened, obviously you then, as a business owner, look at other avenues to market that you may not have access before, or you spend the money that you were going to spend on AdWords on another marketing avenue, right? So the idea that now because I'm not using AdWords, and if I haven't seen a drop in business, that would mean that AdWords was doing nothing in the first place, which I'm not sure you were getting at there. It felt like you might have been, but I don't accept that, because at the end of the day, I've just shifted money into another marketing stream that then possibly is working better. And therefore I've actually flattened that out and I haven't lost any business, but it still doesn't justify it having happened in the first place though.
Okay. So for me, I am completely anti AdWords, and anyone that I have spoken to that used AdWords,
I'm picking up on that.
anyone that did use AdWords that has spoken to me about this issue over the last few months when it's been going on, I've said, listen, just turn off AdWords and don't spend that money on any other super duper marketing that's promising you leads at per click and all that other rubbish. Just focus on doing the best job that you can. Spend some time on Facebook, market on Facebook if you need to. Spend a bit of money there, but organic posts, they're the best posts. And work on your website organically. Try that, and then you will be really surprised at the revenue and how it compares to when you were spending X amount of money on marketing. Because with marketing, with people like Google AdWords, you get into, it's just a monthly expense, the same as having an employee, and you feel like you need it. It's not until you take it away that you realize you don't need it. So for you had AdWords taken away from you before you wanted it taken away. You've moved that money into another marketing area, and you still don't really know whether AdWords was working, or even if the new marketing thing is working. And the only way you would find out would be to switch it off and risk it and see how it worked out. I would be pretty confident in saying you'd be absolutely fine and you'd be able to bank that money and spend it elsewhere. Anyway, we'll go back to Google AdWords and what happened and my view on that. I don't think, although Google have said that it's related to tech support for the scamming reasons, I think this is part of a wider problem, and it's part of something bigger that's going on with repair right now. And I don't think that it's any coincidence that the authorized networks are scaling at the same time that the logic board designs are becoming easier to catastrophically damaged. Also at the same time that the biggest search engine in the world is limiting who can advertise for certain services on their platform. Now, it is good to remember, I am all for a free market, but it is good to remember that Google, as big and as powerful as they are a private company, and so are Apple, so are Amazon, so are Samsung. They can do what they want with their platforms. Google, you've seen it with YouTube. They can censor what they want. They can promote what they want. They can do what they want. It's a private company. But it is important to understand IP laws, copyright, trademarks, and how they work, because they are fundamental in what's going on with AdWords, in my opinion. Now, the term iPhone, although it is synonymous with us to an Apple phone, iPhone is a trademarked brand name. It's not a name that you and me we can't design a t-shirt and stick the word iPhone on it and legally be allowed to do that. You can't design a case and stick iPhone on it. There are rules and regulations that you need to work by, not just from Apple, but legally in every country is different, every jurisdiction is different. But if Apple's brand name for iPhone or iPad or MacBook or Apple, they have rules that you need to work by to use that. Now, the independent repair program, IRP program that we spoke about in the last 2 episodes, I believe, through that, I believe, through leaked information, that you're not allowed to market using the Apple brand names. If you're authorized, you are. So if you're an authorized service provider, you are allowed. But if you are IRP, you're not. So you can buy parts from Apple, you can use the Apple calibration software, but you can't go and market yourself as authorized or as Apple, because they own those trademarks and they can do what they want with them. Now, if you extend those to Samsung and their Samsung brand name and all of their phones, which are also trademark brand names, and you extend it to other manufacturers, and then you look at those being private companies and Google being a private company that's allowing you to advertise on their private platform, they are well within their rights to control the use of trademarks on their website. It would be no different, really, although this is an extreme example, it would be no different, Tim, than you and me designing a phone, having it mass manufactured, calling it the real iPhone and selling it as the real iPhone, like literally with the word iPhone in it, doing that and passing it off as an iPhone. When you are advertising yourself on Google using Google AdWords for iPhone screen repair, it would be argued, or it could be argued, that you're passing yourself off as authorized when you're not. And in the USA, a listener's welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but in the USA, the authorized networks, so the authorized repairers, the authorized franchise networks, some of those do have approval from Google to advertise the repair services using the trademark names, such as iPhone, MacBook, Apple, because they have authorization from Apple. They're ticking all the boxes. They're following Apple's rules. And because Google have checked them, they've vetted them, they've checked that they're allowed to use it, they've provided all the documentation they need to, and they're allowed to use it. So for me, all Google have done with AdWords is we had a bit of a wild, wild west for a few years, being able to advertise in the way that we did. You could set up a mobile repair business or repair from home, and within a couple of hours you could be advertising on Google to everyone in your local area. And Google have just reined that back in, and they've made it more official now than it was or should have been. Now, you said the term phone repairs. I think that, although, I mean, it's more brand and trademark named related, but maybe if they're doing phone repairs as well, this will be a gap in my knowledge. So if you want to educate me there, that would be great.
Well, yeah, I could just, let's do it. I'll do it right now. I am on Google right now. I'm going to type in phone repairs, and I'm just going to search for that. And there is absolutely nothing as far as ads here. There is only organic listings. There's no Google AdWords. If I type in, however, tech support, which actually I just want to come back to that in a second. So you're just to clarify that, you're saying that actual claim that this was all regarding tech support scams is not actually something that Google's made a claim that it was that for that reason. This is just speculation. Is that right?
No, I do believe Google have made that claim, and from the information from the people that did use AdWords, what you're saying is correct. That's what Google's claiming. Google has claimed that over the next few months they will be beginning to authorize people to advertise on the platform again. I haven't seen this. I know people did find ways around it, sort of for a little while, but as far as I'm aware, it's not sort of a widespread thing that everyone can advertise on Google. But for instance, Tech Support UK, if that was the reason, I've just Googled it on an incognito tab, and the first result I've got is an ad. How about you?
Yeah, exactly. I've got it out. I've got 3, and they're local. I can, as far as I know, I mean, I recognise some of these names. I'm pretty sure they're independent repair companies or support companies. You know, this is not something authorised company, which is bizarre. I mean, and even outside of that, it's surely Google's algorithm is smart enough to distinguish between phone repairs and and tech support.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so Google's algorithm is just getting smarter and smarter. It's this is ridiculous. You know?
So let's take this back in. So Tech Support UK, there are ads that debunks Google's reason for doing this in the first place. Google, right? So that debunks that. So let's say that no phone repairs have got any ads at all. Can you just Google for me iPhone repair Australia and see what comes up? And I'll do iPhone repair UK and I'll see what comes up.
Yeah, iPhone repair Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your top one?
There's no ads, firstly.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
And I'm not. And the other thing I should add in here, I don't know if it's to do with the time of day. You know, there's a lot of reasons why ads display, you know, in the first place. But at the moment, at least, there's no ads here coming up. But it is all Apple's website, right? It's all support.apple.com/something. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, all straight up. Yeah.
Yeah, the first two for me are support.apple.com, and they go straight to the Apple. And if the very top one, it asks, where can I get Apple certified repairs? Make an appointment or request service. Find out how to get your iPhone ready to repair. Download a support app, and that will forward you directly to the authorized network. So,
I mean, this is the organic listing, and I guess we could speculate that how.
But who wins with the organic listing? Who wins with the organic listing? Who's always going to win with the organic listing?
I mean, that's just. I mean, let's face it. We're gonna assume Apple's going to have some pretty hot SEO. Change
your search. Change your search. They don't need to change your search now to Samsung Repair Australia. Yeah. What's your top on that?
Samsung Repair Australia. Well, straight to samsung.com/support.
Exactly,
and then
exactly
the 1, 2, 3 top. Wow, that's huge. That's about 8 pages from Samsung.com. Yeah.
So for Samsung, who wins the organic race, and who's always going to win the organic race?
Exactly right. Exactly.
Right. So I've actually got an ad for Samsung.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah, I've got one. But so in the organic world, everything that I've said before still stands, because in the organic world, the manufacturers are always going to win. And they're not going to win because they do the most SEO work. They're going to win because their websites for their brand names are going to rank higher than any third party. No matter how many stores that third party repair business has got, it's never going to rank as high as these manufacturers, because they're titans, they're huge. So for me, repair in general, trademark, copyright, legal issues, we're very naive to as a whole. In the phone and computer repair industry anyway, very naive to. And I think that what Google are doing, I don't agree with a private company having the power that they have anyway, but that's more of a different point. But I don't think that what they're doing on their platform right now is bad and wrong under the current legal processes pretty much worldwide. They are just running their business how they see fit to run their business. And if you look at what Amazon did a few months ago with only allowing Apple to sell refurbished Apple devices on Amazon's platform, they didn't let anyone else, just Apple. I mean, Amazon are a private company. They can do what they want with their platform. That's not been reversed. That hasn't been changed. It's not going to be either. It's just examples of big companies working within the laws of this world, the current laws of this world, just to expand their control, in my eyes.
And I guess, to make that argument, which I'm in two minds about this, right? This is something that challenges me a lot, and I could sit here and debate, and I think quite effectively, both sides of this argument, which is in general, for the most part, I'm a free market guy. So if Google is a private company, we've all heard this argument a million times, I'm sure, online or with friends over a beer. Google is a private company, so is Apple. They, as long as they are doing things that are inside the current legal system, then go for it. And if what they're doing here is they're doing exactly that, but doing it in such a way that would then be trying to take out their competition, that is to say, take out third-party repair, possibly, or at least get leverage over them in some way, then so be it. What I'm not fully understanding is, I mean, if we're going to argue that, we're going to have to say that it's okay for Apple to be serializing components and not telling consumers about this, and have no problem with the trifecta that we spoke about a couple of episodes ago, which everyone should go listen to. And is that fair to say? How do you feel about that?
No, that's not fair to say.
Why?
I understand where you're coming from, but no, that's not fair to say, because whilst Apple are doing no wrong here, and I don't see any reason to change it right away. And it could just be that I don't use AdWords, so it doesn't affect me directly, and I'm just doing what a lot of other people do and ignore it. But with the laws that they're doing this by, with the IP laws, the trademark copyright laws that they're doing this by, for me, it's the same laws that control the quality of parts that we can use and that we can advertise. And I think that the laws are they're old, they're out of date. They haven't followed with the times. I mean, to have terms such as iPhone and iPad and MacBook and have so much control over how they could be used. It's genius. As far as they're going for a private company to have that kind of control. It's phenomenal that they've managed to turn their brand name, their product name, into such a powerful known thing. It's really beautiful as a private thing. But for me, it's transparency. It's transparency. It comes right back to the same thing as the serialization. I don't think that it needs to change, but I understand why with the AdWords. I understand why they're doing it. I understand what their end game is with it. And I understand why it's not completely illegal what they're doing. So for me, AdWords, it doesn't need correcting right away for that reason. For serialization and that type of thing, it's not transparent. It's the complete opposite. It's hidden. It's secret. They do iOS updates and don't reveal exactly what they're tinkering with in the background. That is just like a complete secret thing. And that's a whole new area that we haven't explored before, that we haven't been to before with private companies and the way that they're exerting control. So for me, it's just sort of, look, over here, what they're doing, have a look at it. Just make sure you know it's there. That's the reason that I'm doing this podcast with you. Know it's there. Know what's going on. Know they're not doing it because they love you and they want to give everyone unicorn tears. It's not that at all. It's just control. It all comes down to control. And I mean, Tim, they're all private companies. They can do what they want.
They have businesses to protect.
Yeah, but the thing that annoys me is that it's all dressed up as fluff, as it's all love, it's all diverse, it's all virtue signalling rubbish to pander to people, whilst at the same time they're the complete opposite of it. And it just comes down to transparency. For me, as third-party repair, if Google said to us, listen, we're not going to let you use the term iPhone, we're not going to let you use the term Samsung Galaxy, we're not going to let you use those terms because our mates over here, they don't want you to use those. If they said that, there's nothing anyone could do, and it wouldn't, I mean, you'd be able to do about as much as right now.
Can I add? Don't you think a solution could be here that could solve this problem and maybe reconcile this in both of our minds? Is that they just create the algorithm to be smart enough so that people can't misuse anything that would be copyright infringement. So if that was to go on there,
we're talking
about. So okay,
we're talking about phone. Hang on, we're talking about making Google's algorithm smart enough to know the difference between tech support and phone repair. This is the Google algorithm, Tim. Come on, give them some credit here.
To be able to know the difference between whether you're using the word MacBook and iPhone and something that legitimately, as you've said before, is Apple's to use and nobody else's. Okay, so if I go to put an ad there saying that I fix phones, and I can't somehow put the word firstly, I'm just wondering, is this seriously the same thing for every other third-party industry? I mean, we should probably touch on that. If I was to type in now Toyota repair, are you saying that every mechanic down the street can't have that written into their thing? I mean,
so do it for me. First one is an ad, but it is Toyota's website. But I'll do something, a more common car here. I'll do Ford repair UK. Fords are quite common here. No ads. I've never even thought about the car web before, but no ads. No.
I mean, it's the same for anything. You could just type in any brand of an air conditioner or a toaster,
Tesla,
or ads. There you go. This could, like I said, it could be the time of day you're searching and things like that. It does affect it, and where you are.
Maybe it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon here, and I'm searching for branded car repairs.
I don't see why
I would hide them from me. I don't see why I'd hide them from me right now. But again, with Ford or with Toyota or with Jaguar, for me, you shouldn't be able to repair. You shouldn't be able to repair. You shouldn't be able to advertise using those terms because, if someone took your company name, if your competitor down the road took your company name and put a sign in their window and said repairs, you're going to be annoyed about that. Now, this is just
and it's very easy. It's very easy for us to to say, oh, just because this is a massive company that somehow they don't get to play by that same rule. Of course. I fully understand that. A company's a company if it's got one staff or if it's got 10,000. I fully get that. Yeah. And it's the same laws apply because it's the laws are in place for ethical and logical reasons. And that extends to any business of any size. I fully get that. I agree with that. But it's like, I'm just going to have to just come back to that. And I imagine you agree that the algorithm could easily just be distinguishing between all of this and not. If I go to type in on AdWords, hey, I fix Apple iPhones and MacBooks and iMacs, etc., and then it just sees in there, sorry, and I'm wondering why it's not there, and I can get some explanation as to why that is, and it will say copyright infringement. I go, okay, fair enough. Okay, so I'll reword all of this, and I put more generalized terms in there, and then it shows. Then we're not stepping on anyone's toes lawfully with copyright infringement. And the same thing applies to if anyone is subscribing to the tech support side of things. The same thing. Just work out whether I am actually a phone repair company it would easily just be able to, Google's bots could actually go through my website and see that all of the terms on there and everything I'm advertising is all related to a certain topic and could understand that logic and has nothing to do with tech support scams or call this number so that I can steal all your money and your credit card details. This is something that they are smart enough to be able to program it to do. And the fact that that's not happening and that they're allowing that to happen, it does seem like an assault on third-party repair.
Listen.
And I don't like to play victim, but I can't help. I can't see around it. I really can't.
Listen, if I go in the garden this afternoon in the sunshine, lay in the sun, and I'm having a little chat with my wife or with my kids, and we talk about something, you can be sure that later on today or tomorrow I'll be served up an ad on Facebook or somewhere like that where they know exactly what I've talked about. They've linked it with a product or with a brand, and I'm being served up an ad for that reason. It happens to people worldwide all the time. Google's algorithm or anyone's algorithm is more than clever enough to distinguish who are actually repair stores that can provide service and who aren't. And maybe this comes back to the brands wanting to protect themselves a little bit, the same as why they're so sort of far-reaching with the IRP, which we touched on in the previous episode. It could be that until there is a certification process for third-party repair to prove that they're not just working from their bedroom and they actually know what they're doing, until something like that exists, they'd rather just not advertise anything and take everything organically themselves. It could be that. I mean, I don't know. But this all comes down to transparency. There's no transparency around any of it. And right now, although I'm not begging or asking for government interference with any of this. It's the last thing that I'd want with private companies. But until they're more transparent and they explain what they're doing and why, I think it's wrong. We need more of it. And if they're not going to be, I would expect the journalists that write how great their new phone is every year and how great their new iPad is and why you should buy it, I'd expect them to be asking questions. Questions. This AdWords thing, why are they not talking about it? Google are a tech company. Apple are a tech company. I mean, it all happened at once worldwide. It propagated and no one could post ads within a couple of days. Why are they not? Why have the blogs not gone crazy about this? Why have the writers not emailed Apple, emailed Google, found out exactly what's going on? Why do we not have a conclusive answer beyond this tech support reason from Google, which is obviously rubbish? That's right. And I prior to this, I did just do a little bit of research and do a bit of Googling, ironically, to find out some information on this. And there really is not much talking about it. But what I did find was I've got in front of me here an article from 9th of August 2019. It's entitled, it's PC Mag, Google Ad Policy Change Leaves Third-Party Repair Industry in a Lurch. And I did just, it's worth having a quick read of that. It just basically sums up what we've just been saying. It does largely, it brings about a lot of what we've just said. So it's not sort of just fobbing off third-party repair and saying to what did you Google to get that, sorry?
This has happened. Well, I'm not too sure what I Googled it, actually. This is, if you just Google the heading, Google Ad Policy Change Leaves Third-Party Repair Industry in a Lurch. And there's a part here, while you Google that, I'll read it out. There's a bit here that sums it up quite nicely. It looks like iFixit. Where is it here? I've got a quote here. Quote, Google is severely handicapping repair businesses, prioritizing purchases over repair and reuse, and deciding which companies customers can turn to when they need to fix electronics, unquote. iFixit wrote to the US Federal Trade Commission about the Google ad ban last month, which is good. Now, what I'd like to know is if anyone out there knows what came of that. I'm sure I could do some more Googling afterwards, but if anyone does know and wants to let us know what actually came of that, or maybe you know, Riki, I'm not too sure, but it seems that was, it says that was pushed, upwards somewhere, and I'm not too sure what came of it, but to this day, I mean, that's from that article's from the 9th of August, and that happened a little while ago, and so I'm not too sure. I still can't get Google AdWords, so I do understand. Like I get it. It's not the end of the world for me. I'll grant you that. There's other avenues for marketing. But it's still. It doesn't justify them having done it in the first place. It's not a level
playing field. It's not a level playing field. And it's the same as serialization with the parts availability, schematics, all of it feeds into the same thing, which is it's not a level playing field. The whole time they're moving the goalposts and changing the level. So for us to stay up to date, we need to level up, and we need to make sure that we're on the ball.
Right. I think we've done that a fair bit. If there's anything we missed there, make sure everyone lets us know, and we will possibly address any of those questions or any of the maybe counter arguments you might have to any of what we've said here. We'd love to hear them, and maybe we can flesh them out a bit further. Should we now talk a little bit about terminology? So words we use in our... Actually, you did just touch on it there. So you were talking about copyright, using specific words like iPhone and MacBook and Apple inside Google AdWords, and whether that's okay or not, or using them at all in any way, shape or form. And it seems quite clear that it's not okay. And you used a very good example, which was imagine if your own small business was to have its name used by a competitor, would you be okay with that? And clearly you wouldn't be. So it is pretty much the same thing regardless of the size of the business. That leads me to talk about some other terminology, such as us using terms like original and OEM and aftermarket, and maybe even refurbished and pre-owned, anything else you can think of along the way there. This is something that is interesting because I will hear businesses throw these terms around willy-nilly sometimes, and I flabbergasted as to how they can get away with it. And if they just knowingly are taking a risk using terms that they possibly they themselves know they shouldn't be using publicly, but are just doing that and hoping to get away with it, and maybe just justifying it because they have been getting away with it so long. The problem with that is then it brings about other honest repairers who don't use the terms lightly. They are then forced to have to decide whether they start to then use the terms in order to remain competitive and take those same risks and go down that pathway, or they'd have to decide to stick to their merits and know that they're doing the right thing, but in the meantime be told by customers potentially that someone else can offer a fully original Apple whatever, or using the terms very, very specifically, and you're not willing to offer those terms. Now, I want to throw this to Riki because I'm sure Riki's going to have some really interesting stuff to say about this. My actual concern about this is that further than what I'm even just saying there is that even whose definition, whatever we discuss here now, is this unequivocally accurate anyway? Like, even if you come up with your term of what original is, what OEM is, what aftermarket means, whatever any of this means, this is all, I guess, still up to debate. And because our industry doesn't have, that I know of, a standardized, this is the definition of these words here, and I'm sure that obviously legal eagles will be able to debate these words and tell me the exact meanings of these words. I fully get that. But because that doesn't really exist to an obvious degree within our industry, and this is where you could start talking about all of the systems that we might want to sort of put on ourselves that we were talking about last time, and that we'll touch on in a second. But because that doesn't exist, people just tend to use them willy-nilly and are often claiming to be the arbiter of actually the definitions to the terms without possibly even having any advice from solicitors to be able to justify those terms in the first place. What do you have? I just threw a lot out there just then, Riki. Wade, what do you think?
Terminology, I think, is actually really quite simple. The only terminology that matters is original and OEM. Anything past that doesn't really matter. And this is in my opinion. And original and OEM, they only matter in a way that a court would look at it in your local jurisdiction. So if you've got an original part, so if you had an original screen would be one that you've purchased from Apple. It's an original screen you've purchased from Apple, which no independent third-party repairer can do because they're not authorized to purchase parts from Apple. An OEM, original equipment manufacturer, would be a part that was purchased from a authorized original equipment manufacturer. So it would be, for instance, say LG, who are contracted by Apple to create screens for Apple. They would then sell screens privately to you, and they would be OEM because they are the original equipment manufacturer building them to the original specs but selling them to you rather than the OEM. Again, that doesn't happen with Apple, doesn't happen with Samsung. You can't order from the original equipment manufacturers. Everything after that, refurbished, aftermarket, everything like that, they're just different ways of describing the type of screen that you've got. Original, if you're going to use terms like original and OEM, you need to make 200% sure that you've got a complete audit trail to be able to advertise and use the parts that you're advertising and using. And if you're lying about it and you haven't got those parts, then you better be prepared for some potential legal ramifications of doing that.
Now, it is a problem. So I know it's a problem here in Australia. I see this being used even, and this probably just harps back to the Google AdWords discussion. It could be these words that are problems as well in the searches, I think. Because if you see that word original just being thrown around like that, it's just so dangerous. And I just hear it. I have customers who call me and say, do you guys do original screens? And I'll clearly state to them that would mean that I had purchased it directly from Apple. And because Apple won't open up their supply chain to independent repair, which is something we're talking a lot about in this podcast, I could never claim to be selling you an original screen. And we try to explain that to them so they fully get that. And it's so obvious when you hear it like that. And I would just encourage anyone out there that is listening how to approach this, given that there's going to be a lot of people listening who understand what it's like to feel like an honest person, an honest business person, and be frustrated at the fact that other businesses aren't and they're getting away with not being that way. Just when you talk to the customer, you explain to them what I just said there, because that immediately echoing in that customer's mind brings to light something they really fundamentally knew already. It's obvious. And it then immediately just shines a light on that other company, and they don't worry about it. They're going to hear that they're going to immediately realize this other company I was just speaking to is lying to me. I'm not going to use their service. And the person I'm speaking to on the phone is honest, transparent, and I want to use their service now. And if they're not like that and they want to go back to this company because they think you're lying, then so be it. But that would be my where I would sort of stand on that. But back to the Google AdWords sort of side of things, using that terminology is possibly what has really, really hurt us from being able to use Google AdWords, and it's just got to stop. That language has to really, really stop. Yeah. What do you think about refurbish? You're a refurbisher.
Yeah.
You are getting an original Apple LCD.
Oh, careful, you're going to get me in trouble.
No, well, hang on a second. I should flesh that out so everyone understands what I'm saying. When Riki and we refurbish the LCD screens from Apple iPhones, we are getting a customer's phone that has never been opened, and that person has cracked the glass on the front. We then remove the screen, and that therefore is an original Apple iPhone screen. I mean, okay, so interesting. You that's not all of a sudden original, because hang on a second. I've got to stop there. I can see you want to say something. Why is that not original now? Why? What do you think?
Because it can't be. If you take an iPhone and you remove one bottom screw, I buy an iPhone, right? It's sealed in a box. I give it to you. You take out a bottom screw and you give it back to me. Is that an iPhone you've given back to me under legal definition?
This topic. Okay, so
no. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as the screen. It's the same thing as the screen. If you take a bottom screw out and
I'm glad you did that.
If you give it back to me, is that an iPhone?
Yes.
It's not. Legally, it's not. Of course it's an iPhone, but legally it's not.
Exactly. Well, exactly. So
an iPhone
is
a complete sealed product from the manufacturer or from an authorized thing. If you cannot replace parts or remove parts and it remain original if you're not authorized or the manufacturer. So in that same instance, if you take an original screen off of an iPhone and it has cracked glass and you remove that cracked glass, let's say it's an iPhone 7 or an iPhone 8 with an LCD, right? That LCD that you're left with in your hand, it's got the glass is off, the frame is off, it's just the LCD there, which has come out of an iPhone. It's never been repaired before. That is no longer original. I mean, by all intents and purposes, it is, but it's not. It's not original.
So it sounds like, can I just clarify something? It sounds like you are distinguishing between the legal definition of original and then the common sense definition of original.
Of course,
right?
Common sense wise, it's original. It's an original LCD. If you and me were talking and we did a screen repair and we both used a refurbished display with what I would call an original core LCD, which would be an original LCD that was taken from an original cracked glass, then between us, it would be called original. If I'm marketing to my customers, or if I'm putting information on an invoice, or if I'm doing anything official like that, under legal definition, it is no longer original. No,
I think that's important. I think that no, that's okay, but I think there could be a further distinguishment there, which is what you're putting on an invoice to a customer, what you're communicating to them that they're buying, needs to be transparent and it needs to be explained to them. Like, I fully get that.
And was it with AdWords? Was it before with AdWords, with all of your competitors using the wrong terms? Was it transparent from third-party repair companies to customers via AdWords?
Well, if what you're getting at is using terminology like Apple and iPhone and original and OEM and these kinds of things and just throwing them around willy-nilly, then no, that wasn't transparent. I'm granting that fully. But I just do need to add that the common sense... Doesn't common sense actually really inform the legal system? We're getting a bit philosophical possibly, but doesn't that mean that the law needs to change to some degree? If common sense is telling us something and the law is saying something alternative to common sense, it seems to me that it's not that our common sense is the problem that needs to change. It's the law that needs to be changed to some degree, more specific, different terminology, something to get, that's why we continuously have laws changing. We never have laws ever we don't live in a vacuum. They're constantly changing for this reason. And it's usually, I think, I'm not a lawyer, but a lot of the time seems to probably be informed by our common sense. And to me, that is an iPhone. And so again, can we draw an analogy? Have we just been conditioned by big tech companies to start saying that, it's not an iPhone anymore because it's had a screw taken out of the bottom of it? And because if I just threw the mechanic thing out there, the car repair industry, are we saying that you take the wheel off a car and put another one on there, it's no longer an original Chevy? It doesn't.
An original what? What's the Chevy? Chevrolet?
That's not going to cut it. Yeah, well, whatever car. You name a car.
It depends what they class as their terminology. I mean, a Chevrolet is a brand of a car, isn't it? It's not a model. Am I correct?
Okay.
We don't have any.
So
is that right?
The reason I'm not... let's go Toyota Corolla. It's universal, I think, isn't it? Toyota Corolla?
Yeah, we know.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something everybody can understand rather than say local cars over here. But a Toyota Corolla, if I take off the wheel of a Toyota Corolla and I put another wheel on the Toyota Corolla, is that still a Toyota Corolla?
By the by the logic that is applied to iPhone, then no, it wouldn't be. However, I do believe with a Toyota Corolla, I do believe that would still be a Toyota Corolla.
Right, and is there any difference between these things that makes exactly right?
Except the intent,
except
the intent of Toyota and the intent of Apple with how they're going to use their product names, their legally protected product names and brand name, with protecting their product and their brand. If you look at what goes inside an iPhone and what goes inside a Toyota, you could argue that an iPhone is a lot more technical, it's a lot more intricate, and they can exert a lot more control with how an iPhone is built and made and runs today in comparison to a basic, simple car. Now, if you look at a Tesla and you look at one of the Teslas with the way that they're built and the way that they're programmed, they're very similar with repair in mind. They're very similar to the iPhone, to Apple and the iPhone, with the control that they exert. They know everything. They log everything. They know the serial number of every part that's in there. You can't simply swap out parts and have it continue to work. They're very similar. Now, what's happening with Tesla is Tesla have sort of brought a Silicon Valley type of mindset to the car world. And now all of the other car manufacturers, who are going that way anyway, but they've all had to sort of level up really quickly, and they're all very quickly going that way as well. So in a few years, if there is no change, and I said earlier, I think the laws are outdated. What they're doing is not illegal. There's nothing legally wrong with it, but the laws are outdated. They're not ready for 2020 and the products and the amount of power the products have got. They need updating. But if nothing does happen, then what they're doing is not wrong, and it'll happen more and more, and more things will be serialized. There'll be more control over things. And in the end, we'll all just be leasing cars and leasing phones and leasing toasters. We won't own anything.
But I love that point that actually you just reminded me of that point that you made a couple of episodes ago in the trifecta, is that it's almost as if it's like we're paying the price to own the phone, but being able to use the phone in such a way that's actually more in line with leasing it, right? So
Correct.
it'll be okay. I don't think you would have a problem. I don't have a problem with ownership and leasing options as a business model for a company, of course, but there needs to be a clear distinguishment again between those two things, because consumers would then be able to make well-informed decisions as to how much they're willing to spend to own it or to lease it. And leasing would possibly entail more along the serialization side of things. That maybe makes sense. I'm not too sure if you want to.
Yeah. So when you sign a lease, you sign a lease, and you don't own it, you're leasing it. With Apple, can you imagine the customer journey for an iPhone if you went to Apple to buy an 11 Pro Max today? You'd go to buy it and it would be, okay, so here's your new iPhone 11 Pro Max. Just to let you know, if you swap the battery out for anyone that's not authorized, annoying notification will be popping up all the time. And also, just to let you know that if you swap the screen anywhere other than an authorized network, this annoying notification will pop up all the time, and it'll be in the settings so that if you come to resell your phone at a later date, it'll be worthless. And just to let you know that if you replace one of 3 components inside the phone, that Face ID, that feature that you getting this phone for, because you used to have an older phone with the Touch ID, that won't work anymore because you didn't come to us, the authorized network. Can you imagine the customer journey and all that? So all they're going to do is either not talk about it because they don't have to, or hide it in small print. And let's be honest, even if you had that customer journey as part of purchase, whether you were purchasing it online and it was something that you had to tick a box against, or you did it in store and you had a member of staff reading it out to you, right now, with how popular these products are, people would still buy them. It wouldn't stop them buying them right now, but it will begin the slowdown, and it's the beginning of the slowdown that I think that we're waiting for people to realise what's going on, and the start of that decline. That's what we're waiting for, and that's naturally going to happen with hardware plateauing anyway. But if people understand what's going on with their products on a software and hardware perspective, then I think it would happen quicker.
That gets us to a little bit about franchising within our own industry and authorized networks and all that's entailed with that. Should we have a chat about that now, or would you like to maybe call it a day now and let everyone know who we're going to be having on next week?
Yeah, I'd like to briefly explain. They are effectively two separate things that could become one. But it does feed nicely into our guest for next week. So a franchise being, I'm not completely against franchises. I don't mind franchises. I don't mind the idea at all. And franchises are sort of groups of companies where you can sign up to be a sub company for a company, and you follow their processes. In most instances, you follow their processes. You take their branding and you advertise as their branding, and you effectively become a subdivision of that company. An authorized network. With this, we're talking about people that have committed to the OEM's rules and regulations, and they tick all the boxes to become authorized to get access to anything. You can be a franchise and be an authorized network, so they can feed into the same thing. But off the back of that, I'd like to announce the guest that we're going to have on next week, which will be Mr. Brian Ahern from the United States, who he's ex-CPR, who are one of the franchise networks in the USA, and he started a new venture with a couple of his friends called Repairs First. So we're going to be speaking to him about what Repairs First is, what Repairs First does, his history, a bit about him, and just kind of learn what their direction is and what their plan is going forward.
Amazing. That sounds really interesting. I am excited to talk to him and to you next week again, Riki. We'll call it a day there, I imagine. Thanks again. It's been great, as always. Love having a chat to you on a Sunday evening.
You too, mate.
And I'll speak to you soon.
Speak soon, Tim. Take care, mate.